So this tank's had a little bit of a struggle with algae, as you can see, and basically lots of steps have been taken to ensure that this algae is fixed, but none of the steps have got us where we need to be, because the tank's been getting fairly regular water changes and phosphate removing products have been added. But the thing about these sorts of conditions is that the masses of algae that are in here actually hold all of the phosphate. So even if you test the phosphate of this water, it may be low, but the masses of algae that's in here is basically holding enough phosphate within the algae to pretty much feed itself. Now in the wild, phosphate in a natural coral reef, the layer of phosphate's basically about, the level of phosphate is about 0.06 or 0.006, whatever it is, and we need to get the phosphate down to 0 for about a 3-week period for the algae to start dying. So it might take us a few weeks to get the level to 0, then it will take another 3 weeks for the algae to start dying, then it will take another 3 weeks for the algae to die off. So it could very well be in 9 weeks to go from this stringy, hairy algae to having a beautiful tank that doesn't have hair algae in the tank anymore. And the way that it was getting cleaned previously was with this razor. The problem with the razor is you go and clean off all the algae, and then the algae floats around the aquarium and either reattaches or it dies and releases the phosphate which it had contained, and then the phosphate causes more algae to grow. So though cosmetically it may work, within a few days the algae is just simply back again. So the best way to clean the algae off the glass is to use something like polyfilter and to rub it off, and then when you pull the polyfilter out of the aquarium, all of the waste, all of the algae is actually on the polyfilter, so you are removing the algae out of the tank, because then that physically reduces the phosphate level, and that actually reduces the algae for the future. The other thing too is that the live rock is completely porous, so it fills up with phosphate. So when you reduce the phosphate in the aquarium, due to using phosphate removing medias and doing water changes to dilute it, the phosphate then comes out of the rock. So therefore there's always a delayed reaction time between when you start fixing an algae problem and when the algae problem actually fixes. So to fix a problem like this, I would expect it to take between about 6 and 9 weeks to fix this problem. But then that also works in your advantage for the future, because just as the phosphate leaches out of the rock and out of the sand, it also slowly leaches in. So there is a buffer or lag time for fixing the problem, and there is also a buffer or lag time creating the problem. So that issue does work in your favour as well as not. The other thing too is so basically for the corals to grow healthily, it's the quality of the water, so therefore making sure that your phosphate level is low, making sure that there's very good lighting, which in this case there definitely is. It is getting due for the lights to be replaced soon, but that isn't the problem. Also water flow, which this aquarium has excellent water flow. Then the other thing is vitamins and trace elements. So in this case there's a whole range of different products here, but the way that they were added was a little bit all over the place. So essentially what the corals need is they need a magnesium, which bonds calcium and carbonate. So this needs to be added on Monday, for example. These are all buffers, so they need to be added on Tuesday. And these are calciums, they need to be added on Wednesday. And then you also need a food source, which for a tank like that one, adding a food source once a week is fine, but as it totally fills up, you'll need to add it maybe several times a week. And then a trace element supplement, such as that. So the 5 key things are actually here, but they need to be added systematically. So, for example, every week, not just every now and then. And look at what products need to be kept in the fridge, such as that one, which is quite important. They also got some Easy Life, which is fabulous just to basically help hold all these products in solution. Also got a water ager, which is important for any new tap water. And these are both bacteria products, which aren't a bad thing to add, so add that once a week. So basically, a good structure of these and keeping your levels right is also going to aid that the corals go well, as opposed to letting the algae flourish. So if you have a high pH, a high KH, and a high calcium, the corals are going to favour that environment more than the algae. So we get to choose what grow in the environment by the levels that we create. If we have low nutrient levels, so therefore low phosphate and low nitrate, and we've got high calcium, KH, and carbonate and magnesium, then that's going to aid our corals and inhibit your algae. Whereas if those levels are not quite kept under control, then the levels may inhibit the corals as opposed to inhibit the algae. So this is very, very close to being an absolutely beautiful fish tank. The other thing too is it's really good to remember that algae is a food source. So if this tank has snails, abalones, blennies, hermit crabs, tangs, and more things that are going to eat algae, then the problems will be further away, because as algae grows, it's a valid food source for more scavengers in the aquarium. I can't rate scavengers enough. Having good scavengers can help reduce these sorts of problems in the future. So it's all about phosphate. Get the phosphate down and keep it down, and these problems will go away.